The Day of the Dead is a celebration that is gaining more and more popularity. We see colorful images of skulls and painted faces at the end of October. In 2017, Disney premiered the film Coco, a movie that made the Day of the Dead a celebration popular and known to its audiences. Many think that it is the Mexican version of Halloween. The Day of the Dead is not at all a Mexican Halloween. It goes beyond painting skeletons on the faces of children and adults. The Day of the Dead is a celebration of life and death, a day when the line between the dead and the living blurs. On this day, people remembered their deceased loved ones, those who have parted from this life. One day out of the year, the living invite the souls of their dearly departed to return to their home among the living. The living prepare the favorite foods of the deceased and welcome the spirits into their homes. Cemeteries are also common places of gathering, where many festivities take place. Today we are proud to bring the essence of the Day of the Dead to you in full appreciation of what it represents and the powerful cultural heritage given to us by our indigenous ancestors. The Day of the Dead is a celebration very important to modern-day Mexico. Before the arrival of the Spaniards, the indigenous people dedicated 2 days to the commemoration of their loved ones who had passed away. In 2008, UNESCO inscribed the Day of the Dead in the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Before the arrival of the Europeans in the 16th century, the indigenous celebrated the remembrance of the dead at the beginning of summer. Once the dominant and subdominant cultures merged in the New World, the date of the pre-Hispanic religious rite was changed to coincide with the Roman Catholic liturgical calendar's celebration of saints, namely All Saints' Day of November 1st and All Souls' Day of November 2nd. The changing of the dates and the acceptance of the Church makes the Day of the Dead a purely Mexican festivity, one created by the merging of two cultures, not an extension of one, but a new entity with cultural features of both parents. On this day, entire families gather in cemeteries at the tombs of their loved ones to remember them and celebrate their lives. In an effort to make the journey easy, the people closest to the deceased would make offerings to their departed loved ones. The death of a person was made public through a series of screams and cries. All of the personal belongings of the deceased were gathered along with the corpse and food. The body was buried, and the strenuous journey into the other world began. Every year, for 4 consecutive years, the living family members would gather at the place of burial of their loved ones, and big celebrations were carried out. Altars were prepared a few days before November 1st. Today, the altars can be very complex and require a lot of preparation beforehand. One of the most distinctive parts of Dia de Muertos is the altar. These altars in Mexico are called ofrendas, or offerings. Beautiful arranged Mexican marigold petals and brightly lit candles adorn the altar created to honor the deceased loved ones and help guide them through their journey from the world of the deceased back home to the realm of the living. Water is placed on the altar in pitchers. It is thought to help spirits quench their thirst. The spirit is invited to drink a glass of water. It is also common to have a large bowl, water, and clean towels on the altar. This is for the spirits to wash his or her hands and freshen up a bit from the long journey. Salt is often placed on the altar to scare bad spirits away. Wind helps guide spirits through its movement, and it is represented by papel picado, or pecked paper, traditional tissue paper banners. Fire is represented in the form of cirios and veladoras, candles often found in religious ceremonies. This is to help light the way for the spirits so that they can find their way home. The Xoloitzcuintli is an ancient breed of dog native to Mexico. It helps guide the spirits. Sugar skulls are made of granulated white sugar, pressed and molded. The Aztecs used skulls as offering to the god of the underworld. Today, sugar skulls are adorned with bright colors to attract spirits, and oftentimes have the name of the deceased on their forehead. The cempasúchil, also called flor de muerto, can also be found on every traditional altar. In English, it is known as Mexican marigold or Aztec marigold. Paths of petals, along with copal, an aromatic resin used as incense, help guide the dead to the living world. It is the portal or the connection between the realm of the dead and the realm of the living. The altar is often placed in plain sight as you enter a house. This is done so that when the spirits of the deceased come to the house, the first thing that the spirit sees is the altar with his or her picture on it. The pan de muerto, or bread of the dead, can be traced back to 1519, when the Spaniards colonized Mesoamerica. The Aztecs, using ingredients available to them, like amaranth flour, baked breads containing blood products from human sacrifices that were offered to the gods. Modern recipes use wheat flour instead of amaranth flour, and red sugar to simulate a human heart instead of blood. The bread represents a skull, and the elongated pieces represent bones. In addition to the bread of the dead, many altars display traditional Mexican food, such as mole, tamales, pozole, and atole, along with sweet treats like dulce de calabaza, or candied pumpkin, and golletes, a donut-shaped bread covered in pink and orange sugar. Tequila is another common altar offering. Oscar Chavez was a Mexican actor, movie director, poet, music arranger, songwriter, and singer, Mexico's greatest revivalist folk singer. Chavez was born in Mexico City in 1935. Oscar's first job was in a bank, which is where he initially became interested in acting. His first theatrical role was in 1958. At the beginning of his acting career, he was approached by Lillian Mendelssohn, a researcher. Mendelssohn invited Oscar Chavez and other singers to form part of a music recording project aimed at reviving old Mexican music. The title of the album was Mexican Lyric Heritage. In 1966, Chavez was invited to act in the film Los Caifanes, a film that earned him the Diosa de Plata, or Silver Goddess Award, by the Mexican Film Journalists Association, and the Premio Ariel, or Ariel Award, by the Mexican Academy of Film Arts and Sciences. The Ariel Award is considered the most prestigious award in Mexico's movie industry. In 1968, Mexico lived a period of social turmoil, where a series of civil revolts took place against the Mexican government's authoritarian stance, leading to the massacre of over 250 protesters at a rally by the Mexican government. Oscar Chavez was an important participant in the resistance. His folkloric music was a tool with highly politicized lyrics in parodies of traditional songs against the government and the elite classes. His protest approach remained his brand throughout the entirety of his career, always in favor of change and progress, using parodies against the political status quo. On April 28, 2020, Oscar Chavez was hospitalized in Mexico City on account of difficulty breathing. 2 days after being hospitalized, Chavez departed this life after suffering a respiratory arrest. The cause of death, according to the treating hospital, was pneumonitis related to COVID. Oscar remained active throughout his career. In 2019, at the age of 84, Chavez was named Mexico City's Living Cultural Heritage by Mexico City's Department of Culture. That same year, during an interview, he stated that he was not ready to retire. He had many plans for new albums. Today we celebrate the life of Oscar Chavez, his death, his legacy, and his courage. He used his talent to support his convictions, and he stood by them. A warrior through and through.
Por ti yo dejé de pensar en el mar. Por ti yo dejé de fijarme en el cielo. Por ti me ha dado por llorar como el mar. Me he puesto a sollozar como el cielo. Me ha dado por llorar. Por ti la ternura se niega conmigo. Por ti la amargura me sigue y la sigo. Por ti me estoy volviendo loco de celos. Se vuelven contra mí mis anhelos. Se vuelven contra mí. Por ti la vida se me ha vuelto un infierno. Por ti estoy muerto de amor, tan enfermo. Por ti se ha vuelto llaga el sol y el dolor. Se han vuelto mala flor y el amor. se ha vuelto mala flor. Por ti el mar es la locura del cielo. Por ti el llanto es una llaga de celos. Por ti el dolor es el sol sin la flor. El infierno es amor tan eterno. El infierno es amor. Por ti, por ti, por ti, por ti.
Oscar Chavez recorded a couple of albums of Mexican folkloric songs that make reference to death, how life and death live in two separate realms, and how they can sometimes converge. The legend of La Llorona translates as the crier or the wailing woman, a legend of a woman who drowned her children and is destined to mourn their death for all of eternity. She has the form of a ghost or a specter that roams the world of the living in perpetual mourning, crying out, "My children." There are many similar versions of the same legend across the American continent. Some have similar names, and others have different storylines. The Mexican version can be traced back to before the arrival of the Spaniards. It is thought that the Aztecs experienced a series of 8 events which were considered to be omens foretelling the fall of their empire, the Tenochtitlan Empire. The 6th omen was that of a woman who would periodically appear at night and whose voice could be heard in complete anguish. "My children, we have to leave now and go far. My children, where will I take you?" It was likely that the woman represented the land or the empire, and the children that she was protecting represented the people of the land, the natives. The legend survived the Spanish conquest and found its way into the folklore of the hybrid colonial culture. It survives to this day. However, it no longer makes reference to the 6th omen or to the fall of the Tenochtitlan Empire, but rather as a scary story whereby a woman appears in the dead of night, dressed in white, with a white veil, wailing in search of her children. According to the modern versions of the legend, after learning that her husband had left her for a younger woman of high social rank, the woman had no way of providing for her children and decided to drown them in a river instead of seeing them starve to death. She now walks along the edges of rivers, mourning their death, crying, "My children." This is yet another example of the realm of the living and the dead overlapping, where it is possible for the dead and the living to interact with each other. Based on the folktale of the Wailing Woman, in the 1850s, a song of unknown authorship was written about La Llorona. It became highly popular during the Mexican Revolution between 1910 and 1920. And today, it is one of Mexico's most popular songs, with more than 500 versions. Oscar Chavez was one of many singers who recorded it.
Todos me dicen el negro, llorona, negro pero cariñoso. Todos me dicen el negro, llorona, negro pero cariñoso. Yo soy como el chile verde, llorona, picante pero sabroso. Yo soy como el chile verde, llorona, picante pero sabroso. Ay de mí, llorona, 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 de un campo lirio. Ay de mí, llorona, 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 de un campo lirio. El que no sabe de amores, llorona, no sabe lo que es martirio. El que no sabe de amores, llorona, no sabe lo que es martirio. No sé qué tienen las flores, llorona, las flores del campo santo. No sé qué tienen las flores, llorona, las flores del campo santo, que cuando las mueve el viento, llorona, parece que están llorando. Que cuando las mueve el viento, llorona, parece que están llorando. Ay de mí, llorona, 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 llévame a ver. Ay de mí, llorona, 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 llévame a ver. Donde de amores se olvida, llorona, y se empieza a padecer. Donde de amores se olvida, llorona, y se empieza a padecer. Yo te soñaba dormida, llorona, dormida, te estabas quieta. Yo te soñaba dormida, llorona, dormida, te estabas quieta. Pero en llegando el olvido, llorona, soñé que estabas despierta. Pero en llegando el olvido, llorona, soñé que estabas despierta. Ay de mí, llorona, 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 llévame al río. Ay de mí, llorona, 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 llévame al río. Tápame con tu rebozo, llorona, porque muero de frío. Tápame con tu rebozo, llorona, porque muero de frío.
Another of Mexico's most popular folkloric songs is La Bruja, or The Witch, also recorded by Oscar Chavez. It's a story of a supernatural being, a spinster who comes to men in the middle of the night to seduce and trap them. The musical genre for this song is known as the son jarocho, a type of music of Veracruz, the eastern coast of Mexico along the Gulf of Mexico. It is very lively and generally played with a series of different-sized jaranas, or fretted stringed instruments native to Veracruz, which resemble the shape of a guitar. Other instruments include the harp and tambourine. The music of Veracruz has beautiful dances and dance costumes, among the most beautiful in all of Mexico. While the folk music is generally danced by men and women, La Bruja is a dance solely for women. A poorly lit stage sets the mood, and the dancer places a lit candle on her head and carries out the entire dance with it.
Hello, I'm Carla Villalobos Cárdenas and I'll be dancing La Bruja. This song is originally from the state of Veracruz, from the Huasteca region, and it's actually one of the most famous and representative songs for the Huasteca. It's a classical tale of magic and seduction told through a classic traditional dance. It's about a woman who uses her charms to attract men. Not only that, but it's also based on the bonding the state has with the supernatural. The traditional attire for this dance is known as traje de jarocha, which consists of a white dress covered in lace, no sleeves, white shoes, black apron, and for this song specifically, women use a candle on their heads. So wish me luck!
Qué bonito es volar a las 2 de la mañana, a las 2 de la mañana. Ay, qué bonito es volar, ay mamá, volar y dejarse caer en los brazos de una dama. Ay, qué bonito es volar a las 2 de la mañana y mamá me agarra la bruja, me lleva a su casa, me vuelve maceta y una calabaza. Me agarra la bruja, me lleva al cerrito, me vuelve maceta y un calabacito. Ay, dígame, dígame, dígame usted, ¿cuántas criaturitas se ha chupado usted? Ninguna, 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 no sé, ando en pretensiones de chuparme a usted. Me espantó una mujer en medio del mar salado, en medio del mar salado. Ay, me espantó una mujer, ay mamá, porque no quería creer lo que otros me habían contado. Lo de arriba era mujer, lo de abajo pescado, ay mamá. Cuando a mi mujer la encuentro acostada, le jalo las colchas, no me dice nada. Cuando a mi mujer la encuentro durmiendo, le jalo las colchas y salgo corriendo. Ay, dígame, dígame, dígame usted, ¿cuántas criaturitas se ha chupado usted? Ninguna, 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 no sé, ando en pretensiones de chuparme a usted. A la bruja me encontré, en el aire iba volando, en el aire iba volando. A la bruja me encontré, ay mamá. Entonces le pregunté que a quién andaba buscando. Me dijo, ¿quién es usted? Soy cantador de guapango, ay mamá. Escóndete, Chepa, escóndete, Juana, que ahí anda la bruja debajo en la cama. Escóndete, Chepa, escóndete, Jova, que allá anda la bruja volando en su escoba. Ay, dígame usted, ¿cuántas criaturitas se ha chupado usted? Ninguna, no sé. Ando en pretensiones de chuparme a usted.
La Catrina is a female skeleton created in 1910 by illustrator José Guadalupe Posada and popularized by muralist Diego Rivera. La Catrina is wearing a dress traditionally used by upper-class women with a large feathered hat, ridiculing the people who claim European cultural heritage over indigenous heritage. Today, any figure of a woman displaying characteristics related to the Day of the Dead is called a Catrina. The 2017 Disney film Coco is a film about the Mexican Day of the Dead tradition. The different scenes do a fantastic job at depicting the people and the lifestyle related to the Day of the Dead. In it, we see beautiful altars, the Mexican marigold cempasúchil, music, colors, sounds, and a bustling cemetery. The world of the dead is also depicted as being more lively than the world of the living. It is filled with colors, excitement, lights, and song. It is a great representation of the Day of the Dead celebration. Painted faces have become representative of the Day of the Dead. The designs vary from person to person and from artist to artist, but they all have one theme in common: the design of a skull. Living beings paint their face in representation of death. Another example of how the line between the living and the dead blurs in Mexican culture. The Day of the Dead is a Mexican celebration that commemorates life and death. When we remember our deceased family members, it feels as though they are still with us. And as long as we remember them, they never really leave. On the altar, you will find a picture of 4 generations of my deceased family members. The oldest picture of my great-great-grandfather, the Colonel José María Buenrostro, born before the turn of the 20th century. To anyone alive today, he's only ever existed as a memory passed down from generation to generation within my family. Upon my death, my picture will be placed in the upper right-hand corner of the same picture frame, and I too will eventually only exist as a memory for my descendants. One way to ensure that the dead never permanently leave us is to light a candle for them and illuminate the path for them to return from the other side. Welcome your loved ones every November 1st and 2nd with their favorite foods, water to drink and freshen up from their long journey, with incense, flowers, colors, make them feel alive again. As long as we remember them, they will never truly leave us. And let each one of us hope that when each one of us leaves this life, our loved ones will remember us and offer us a sip of tequila upon our brief visit every year, even if we merely exist as a distant family memory for our descendants, those we will never meet.